Chapter 6. Raina. Most of the time, Raina could control her nightmares. She had trained her mind to start all her dreams in her favourite place, the Garden of Batches on the tallest hill in New Rome. She felt safe and tranquil there. When visions invaded her sleep, as they always did with demigods, she could contain them by imagining they were reflections in the garden's fountain. This allowed her to sleep peacefully and avoid waking up the next morning in cold sweat. Tonight, however, she wasn't so lucky. The dream began well enough. She stood in the garden on a warm afternoon, the arbour heavy with blooming honeysuckle. In the centre of the fountain, this little statue of Bacchus sprouted water into the basin. The golden domes and red tiled roof of New Rome spread out below her. Half a mile west rose the fortifications of Camp Jupiter. Beyond that, the little Tiber curved gently around the valley, tracing the edge of Berkeley Hills, hazy and golden in the summer light. Raina held a cup of hot chocolate, her favourite drink. She exhaled contentedly. This place was worth defending for herself, for her friends, for war demigods. Her 4 years at Camp Jupiter hadn't been easy, but they'd been the best time of Raina's life. Suddenly the horizon darkened. Raina thought it might be a storm. Then she realized a tidal wave of dark light was rolling across the hills, turning the skin of the earth inside out, leaving nothing behind. Raina watched in horror as the earth and tide reached the edge of the valley. The god Terminus sustained a magical barrier around the camp. But it slowed the destruction for only a moment. Purple light sprayed upward like shattered glass, and the tide poured through, shredding trees, destroying roads, wiping the little Tiber off the map. It's a vision, Raina thought. I can control this. She tried to change the dream. She imagined that the destruction was only a reflection in the fountain, a harmless video image, but the nightmare continued in full vivid scope. The earth swallowed the field of Mars, obliterating every trace and fort and trenches from the war games. The city's aqueduct collapsed like a line of children's blocks. Camp Jupiter itself fell. Watchtowers crashing down, walls and barracks disintegrating. The screams of demigods were silenced, and the earth moved on. A sob built in Raina's throat. The gleaming shrines and monuments on Temple Hill crumbled. The Colosseum and the Hippodrome were swept away. The tide of Rome reached the Pomerian line and roared straight into the city. Families ran through the Forum. Children cried in terror. The Senate House imploded. Villas and gardens disappeared like crops under a tiller. The tide churned uphill towards the Garden of Bacchus, the last remnant of Raina's world. You left them helpless, Raina Ramazza Arellano. A woman's voice issued from the black terrain. Your camp will be destroyed. Your quest is a fool's errand. My hunter comes for you. Raina tore herself from the garden railing. She ran to the fountain of Bacchus and gripped the rim of the basin, staring desperately into the water. She willed the nightmare to become a harmless reflection. Sunk, the basin broke in half, split by an arrow the size of a rake. Raina stared in shock at the very raven feathered fletching. The shaft painted red, yellow, and black like a coral snake. The Stygian iron pointed embedded in her gut. She looked up through a haze of pain. At the edge of the garden, a dark figure approached. A silhouette of a man whose eyes shone like miniature headlamps, blinding Raina. She heard the scrape of iron against leather as he drew another arrow from his quiver. Then her dream changed. The garden and the hunter vanished, along with the arrow in Raina's stomach. She found herself in an abandoned vineyard, stretched out before her. Acres of dead grapevines hung in rows on wooden lattices, like gnarled miniature skeletons. At the far end of the field stood a cedar shingled farmhouse with a wraparound porch. Beyond the land dropped off into the sea. Raina recognized this place, the Goldsmith Winery on the north shore of Long Island. Her scouting parties had secured it as a forward base for the Legion's assault on Camp Half-Blood. She had ordered the bulk of the Legion to remain in Manhattan until she told them otherwise. But obviously, Octavian disobeyed her. The entire 12th Legion was camped in the northernmost field. They dug in with their usual military precision, 10-foot deep trenches and spiked earthen walls around the perimeter. A watchtower on each corner armed with ballistae. Inside, tents were arranged in neat rows of white and red. The standards of all 5 colours curled in the wind. The sight of the Legion should have lifted Raina's spirits. It was a small force, barely 200 demigods, but they were well trained and well organized. If Julius Caesar came back from the dead, he would have had no trouble recognizing Raina's troops as worthy soldiers of Rome. But they had no business being so close to Camp Half-Blood. Octavian's insubordination made Raina clench her fists. He was intentionally provoking the Greeks, hoping for battle. Her dream vision zoomed to the porch of the farmhouse, where Octavian sat in a glided chair that looked suspiciously like a throne. Along with his senatorial purple-lined toga, his centurion badge, and his augur's knife, he had adopted a new honour, a white cloth mantle over his head, which marked him as Pontifex Maximus, High Priest of the Gods. Raina wanted to strangle him. No demigod in living memory has taken the title Pontifex Maximus. By doing so, Octavian was levitating himself almost to the level of emperor. To his right, reports and maps were strewn across a low table. To his left, a marble altar was heaped with fruit and gold offerings, no doubt for the gods. But to Raina, it looked like an altar to Octavian himself. At his side, the Legion's eagle-bearer, Jacob, stood at attention, sweating in his lion-skin cloak, as he held the staff with the golden eagle standard of the 12th. Octavian was in the midst of an audience. At the base of the stairs knelt a boy in jeans and a rumpled hoodie. Octavian's fellow centurion of the first cohort, Mike Cahill, stood to one side with his arms crossed, glowering with obvious displeasure. Well now, Octavian scanned a piece of parchment. I see here you are, a legacy, a descendant of Orcus. The boy in the hoodie looked up, and Raina caught her breath. Bryce Lawrence. She recognized the mop of brown hair, his broken nose, his cruel green eyes, and the smoke-twisted smile. Yes, my lord, Bryce said. Oh, I am not a lord. Octavian's eyes twinkled. Just a centurion, an augur, and a humble priest doing his best to serve the gods. I understand you were dismissed from the Legion for disciplinary problems. Raina tried to shout, but she couldn't make a sound. Octavian knew perfectly why Bruce had been kicked out. Much like his godly father Orcus, the underworld god of punishment, Bryce was completely remorseless. The little Psychopath had survived his trials with Lupa just fine. But as soon as he arrived at Camp Jupiter, He had proved to be untrainable. He tried to set a cat on fire for fun. He had stabbed a horse and sent it stampeding through the forum. He was even suspected of sabotaging a piece of seed engine and getting his own centurion killed during the war games. If Raina had been able to prove it, Bryce's punishment would have been death. Because the evidence was circumstantial, and because Bryce's family was rich and powerful with lots of influence in Europe, he got away with lighter sentence of banishment. Yes, Pontifex, Bryce said slowly, but if I may, those charges were unproven. I am a loyal Roman. Mike Hayhow looked like he was doing his best not to throw up. Octavian smiled. I believe in second chances. You've responded to my call for recruits. You have the proper credentials and letters of recommendation. Do you pledge to follow my orders and serve the Legion? Absolutely, said Bryce. Then you are reinstated in probator, Octavian said, until you have proven yourself in combat. He gestured at Mike, who reached into his pouch and fished out a lead probator tablet on a leather cord. He hung a cord around Bryce's neck. Report to 5th cohort, Octavian said. They could use some new blood, some fresh perspective. If your centurion Decate has any problem with that, tell him to talk to me. Bryce smiled like he'd just been handed a sharp knife. My pleasure. And Bryce, Octavian's face looked almost ghoulish under his white mantle. His eyes too piercing, his cheeks too gaunt, his lips too thin and colourless. However much money, power and prestige the Lawrence family carries in the Legion, remember that my family carries more. I am personally sponsoring you, and as I am sponsoring all the other new recruits. Follow my orders and you will advance quickly. Soon I may have a little job for you, a chance to prove your worth, but cross me and I will not be as lenient as Raina. Do you understand? Bryce's smile faded. He looked like he wanted to say something, but he changed his mind. He nodded. Good, Octavian said. Also, get a haircut. You look like one of those Grace's scums. Dismissed. After Bryson left, Mike Cahill shook his head. That makes 24 now. It's good news, my friend, Octavian assured him. We need the extra manpower. Murderers, thieves, traitors. Loyal demigods, Octavian said, who owe their positions. Mike scowled until Rita hadn't met him. He never understood why people had called biceps guns. But Mike's arms were as thick as bazooka barrels. He had broad features, a toasted almond complexion, onyx hair, and proud dark eyes, like the old Hawaiian kings. She wasn't sure how a high school linebacker from Ohio had wound up with Venus for a mum, but no one in the Legion gave him any grief about that, not once they saw him crush rocks with his bare hands. Rena had always liked Mike Cahill. Unfortunately, Mike was very loyal to his sponsor, and his sponsor was Octavian. The self-appointed Pontifex rose and stretched. Don't worry, old friend. Our siege team have the Greek camp surrounded. Our eagles have complete air superiority. The Greeks aren't going anywhere until we're ready to strike. In 11 days, all my forces will be in place. My little surprises will be prepared. On August 1st, the feast of Spes, the Greek camp will fall. But Rena said, we've been through this. Octavian slid his iron dagger from his belt and threw it at the table where it impaled a map of Camp Half-Blood. Rena had forfeited her position. She went to the ancient lands, which is against the law. But the Earth Mother has been stirring because of the war between the Greek and Roman camps, yes. The gods are impacted, yes. And how do we solve that problem, Mike? We eliminate the division. We wipe out the Greeks, we return the gods to their proper manifestation as Roman. Once the gods are restored to their full power, Gaia would not dare rise. She will sink back into her slumber. We demigods will be strong and unified, as we were in the old days of the Empire. Besides, the first day of August is more auspicious. The month named after my ancestor, Augustus. And you know how he united Romans. He seized power and became an emperor, Mike grumbled. Octavian waved aside the comment. Nonsense. He saved Rome by becoming first citizen. He wanted peace and prosperity, not power. Believe me, Mike, I intend to follow his example. I will save New Rome, and when I do, I will remember my friends. Mike shifted his considerable bulk. You sound certain. Has your gift of prophecy? Octavian held up his hand in warning. He glanced at Jacob, the eagle bearer, who was still standing at attention behind him. Jacob, you're dismissed. Why don't you go polish the eagle or something? Jacob's shoulders slumped in relief. Yes, Centurion, Pontifex, go! I'll go. Once Jacob had hobbled off, Octavian's face clouded. Mike, I told you not to speak of my, problem, but to answer your question, no, there still seems to be some interference with Apollo's usual gift to me. He glanced resentfully at a pile of mutilated stuffed animals heaped in the corner of the porch. I can't see the future. Perhaps that's false. Or perhaps that false oracle at Camp Half-Blood is working some sort of witchcraft, but as I told you before, in strictest confidence, Apollo spoke to me clearly last year at Camp Jupiter. He personally blessed my endeavours. He promised I would be remembered as the saviour of the Romans. Octavian spread his arms, revealing his harp tattoo, the symbol of his godly forefather. 7 slash marks indicated his years of service, more than any preceding officer, including Rhaena. Never fear, Mike, we will crush the Greeks. We will stop Gaia and her minions. Then we'll take that harpy that the Greeks have been harbouring, the one who memorized our Sibylline books, and we'll force her to give us the knowledge of our ancestors. Once that happens, I'm sure Apollo will restore my gift of prophecy. Then Camp Jupiter will be more powerful than ever. We will rule the future. Mike scowled in lesson, but he raised his arm in salute. You're the boss. Yes, I am. Octavian pulled his dagger from the table. Now go check on those 2 dwarfs you captured. I want them properly terrified before I interrogate them again and dispatch them to Tartarus. The dream faded. Hey, wake up! Rhaena's eyes fluttered open. Gleason Hedge was leaning over her, shaking her shoulder. We got trouble. Her grave tone got her blood moving. What is it? She struggled to sit up. Ghosts, monsters? Hedge scowled. Worse! Tourists! Chapter 7. Rhaena. The hordes had arrived. In groups of 20 or 30, tourists swarmed through the ruins, milling around the villas wandering the cobblestone paths, gawking at the colourful frescoes and mosaics. Rhaena worried how the tourists would react to a 40-foot-tall statue of Athena in the middle of the courtyard. But the mist must have been working overtime to obscure the mortal's vision. Each time a group approached, they'd stop at the edge of the courtyard and stare in disappointment at the statue. One British tour guide announced, scaffolding. It appears this area is undergoing restoration. Pity. Let's move along. And off they went. At least the statue didn't rumble. Die, unbelievers! And zapped the mortals to dust. Rena had once dealt with a statue of the goddess dying like that. It hadn't been her most relaxing day. She recalled what Annabeth had told her about Athena Parthenos. Its magical aura both attracted monsters and kept them at bay. Sure enough, every so often, out of the corner of her eye, Rena would spot glowing white spirits in Roman clothes, flirting among the ruins, frowning at the statue in consternation. Those Lemures are everywhere, Gleason muttered, keeping their distance for now. But come to nightfall, we'd be ready to move. Ghosts are always worse at night. Rena didn't need to be reminded of that. She watched as an elderly couple in matching pastel shirts and Bermuda shorts tottered through a nearby garden. She was glad they didn't come any closer. Around the camp, Coach Edge had rigid all sorts of tripwires, snares, and oversized mouse traps. That wouldn't stop any self-respecting monster, but they might very well rain down a senior citizen. Despite the warm morning, Rena shivered from her dreams. She couldn't decide which was more terrifying, the impending destruction of New Rome, or the way Octavian was poisoning the Legion from the inside. Your quest is a fool's errand. Come Jupiter needed her. The 12th Legion needed her. Yet Rena was halfway across the world watching a satyr toast blueberry waffles on a stick over an open fire. She wanted to talk about her nightmares, but she decided to wait until Nico woke up. She wasn't sure she'd have the courage to describe them twice. Nico kept snoring. Rena had discovered that once he fell asleep, it took a lot to wake him up. The coach would do a goat hoof tap dance around Nico's head, and the son of Hades wouldn't even budge. Here, Hedge offered her a plate of flame-grilled waffles with fresh sliced kiwi and pineapple. It all looked like surprisingly good. Where are you getting these supplies? Rena marveled. Hey, I'm a satyr. We're very efficient packers. He took a bite of waffle. We also know how to live off the land. As Rena ate, Coach Hedge took out a notepad and started to write. When he was finished, he folded paper into an airplane and tossed it into the air. A breeze carried it away. A letter to your wife, Rena guessed, under the rim of his baseball cap. Hedge's eyes were bloodshot. Mellie's a cloud in it. Air spirits sending stuff by paper airplane. Air spirits send stuff by paper airplane all the time. Hopefully her cousins will keep the letter going across the ocean until they find her. It's not as fast as Iris message, but well, I want our kid to have some record of me. In case you know, we'll get you home, Rena promised. We'll see your kid. You'll see your kid. Hedge clenched his jaw and said nothing. Rena was pretty good at getting people to talk. She considered essential to know her comrade in arms, but she had a tough time convincing Hedge to open up about his wife Mellie, who was close to giving birth back at Camp Half-Blood. Rena had trouble imaging the coach as a father, but she understood what it was like to grow up without parents. She wasn't going to let that happen to Coach Hedge's child. Yeah, well, the satyr bit off another piece of waffle, including the stick he'd toasted it on. I just wish we could move faster. He chin pointed to Nico. I don't see how this kid is going to last one more jump. How many more will it take us to get home? Rena shared his concern. In only 11 days, the giants planned to await Gaia. Octavian planned to attack Camp Half-Blood on the same day. That couldn't be a coincidence. Perhaps Gaia was whispering in Octavian's ear, influencing his decision subconsciously. Or worse, Octavian was actively in league with the Earth Goddess. Rena didn't want to believe that even Octavian would knowingly betray the Legion, but after what she'd seen in her dreams, she couldn't be sure. She finished her meal as a group of Chinese tourists shuffled past the courtyard. Rena had been awake for less than an hour already. She was restless to get moving. Thanks for breakfast, Coach. She got to her feet and stretched. If you'll excuse me, where there are tourists, there are bathrooms. I need to use the little praetor's room. Go ahead. The coach jangled the whistle that hung around his neck. Coach jangled the whistle that hung around his neck. If anything happens, I'll blow. Rena left Orm and Argentum on guard duty and strolled through the crowd of mortals until she found a visitor centre with restrooms. She did her best to clean up, but she found it ironic that she was actually in an actual Roman city and couldn't enjoy a nice hot Roman bath. She had to settle for paper towels, a broken soap dispenser, an asthmatic hand dryer, and the toilets. The less said about those, the better. As she was walking back, she passed a small museum with window display. Behind the glass lay a row of plaster figures, all frozen in throes of death. A young girl was curled in a fetal position. A woman lay twisted in agony, her mouth open to scream, but her arms thrown overhead. A man knelt with his head bowed, as if accepting the inevitable. Rena stared with a mixture of horror and revulsion. She'd read about such figures, but she'd never seen them in person. After the eruption of Vesuvius, the volcano ash had buried the city and hardened to rock around dying Pompeians. Their bodies had disintegrated, leaving behind human-shaped pockets of air. Early archaeologists had poured plaster into the holes and made these casts, creepy replicas of ancient Romans. Rena found it disturbing, wrong, that these people's dying moments were on display like clothes in a shop window, yet she couldn't look away. All her life she'd dreamed about coming to Italy. She assumed it would never happen. The ancient lands were forbidden to modern demigods. The area was simply too dangerous. Nevertheless, she wanted to follow in the footsteps of Aeneas, son of Prote, the first demigod to settle here after the Trojan War. She wanted to see the original Tiber River, where Lupa the wolf goddess saved Romulus and Remus. But Pompeii, Rena had never wanted to come here. At the site of Rome's most infamous disaster, an entire city swallowed by the earth. After Rena's nightmares, that hit a little too close to home. So far in the ancient lands, she'd only seen one place on her wish list: Diocletian's palace in Split. And even that visit had hardly gone the way she'd imagined. Rena used to dream about going there with Jason to admire their favourite emperor's home. She pictured romantic balls with him through the old city, sunset picnics on the parapets. Instead, Rena had arrived in Croatia not with him, but with a dozen angry wind spirits on her tail. She'd fought her way through the ghosts in the palace. On her way out, Gryphons had attacked, mortally wounding her Pegasus. The closest she'd got to Jason was finding a note he'd left for her under a bust of Diocletian in the basement. She would only have painful memories of that. Don't be bitter, she chided herself. Aeneas suffered too. So did Romulus, Diocletian, and all the rest. Romans don't complain about hardship. Staring at the plastered dead figures in the museum window, she wondered what they had been thinking as they curled up to die in the ashes. Probably not. Well, we're Romans, we shouldn't complain. A gust of wind blew through the ruins, making a hollow moan. Sunlight flashed against the window, momentarily blinding her. With this far, Rena looked up. The sun was directly overhead. How could it be noon already? She'd left the house of the Fawn just after breakfast. She'd only been standing here a few minutes, hadn't she? She tore herself from the museum display and hurried off, trying to shake the feeling that the dead Pompeys were whispering were whispering behind her back. The rest of the afternoon was unnerving and quiet. Rain kept watch while Coach Hedge slept, but there was nothing much to guard against. Tourists came and went. Random harpies and wind spirits flew by overhead. Raina's dogs would snarl in warning, but the monsters didn't stop to fight. Ghosts scowled around the edges of the courtyard, apparently intimidated by the eternal Parthenos. Raina couldn't blame them. The longer the statue stood in Pompeii, the more anger it seemed to radiate, making Raina's skin itchy and her nerves raw. Finally, just after sunset, Nico woke. He wolfed down an avocado and cheese sandwich, the first time he'd shown a decent appetite since leaving the House of Hades. Raina hated to ruin his dinner, but they didn't have much time. As the daylight faded, the ghosts started moving closer and in greater numbers. She told him about her dreams, the earth swallowing Camp Jupiter, Octavian closing in on the Camp Half-Blood, and the hunter with the glowing eyes who had shot Raina in the gut. Nico stared at his empty plate. This hunter, a giant maybe? Coach Hedge grunted. I'd rather not find out. I say we keep moving. Nico's mouth twitched. You're suggesting we avoid a fight? Listen, Cupcake, I like a smackdown as much as the rest guy, but we've got enough monsters to worry about without some bounty hunter giant tracking us across the world. I don't like the sound of those huge arrows. For once, Raina said, I agree with Hedge. Nico unfolded his avatar jacket. He put his finger through an arrow hole in his sleeve. I could ask for advice. Nico sounded reculant. Dahlia Grace, Jason's sister, Raina said. She'd never met Dahlia. In fact, she'd only recently learned Jason had a sister. According to Jason, she was a Greek demigod, a daughter of Zeus. Zeus, who led a group of Artemis followers. The whole idea made Raina's head spin. Nico nodded. The hunters of Artemis are hunters. If anybody knew about the giant hunter, Dahlia would. I could try sending her an iris message. You don't sound very excited about the idea, Raina. Raina noticed. Are you two on bad terms? We're fine. A few feet away, Oren snarled quietly, which meant Nico was lying. Raina decided not to press. I should also try to contact my sister, Hyla. She said Camp Jupiter is lightly defended. If Geo attacks there, perhaps the Amazons could help. Coach had scowled. No offense, but what's an army of Amazons going to do against a wave of dirt? Raina fought down a sense of dread. She suspected Hedge was right. Against what she'd seen in her dreams, the only defense would be to prevent the giants waking Gaia. For that, she had to put her trust in the crew of Diago 2. The daylight was almost gone. Around the courtyard, ghosts were forming a mob. Hundreds of glowing Gromans carrying spectral clubs or stones. We can talk more after the next jump. Raina decided. Right now, we need to get out of here. Yeah, Nico stood. I think we can reach Spain this time. If we're lucky, just let me. The mob of ghosts vanished like a mass of birthday candles blown out in a single breath. Raina's hand went to her dagger. Where did they go? Nico's eyes flitted across the runes. His expression was not reassuring him. I'm not sure, but I don't think it's a good sign. Keep a lookout. I'll get harnessed up. Should only take a few seconds. Gleeson's head rose to his hooves. A few seconds you do have. Rena's stomach curled into a tiny ball. Head spoke with a woman's voice, the same one Rena had heard in her nightmare. She drew her knife. Head turned towards her, his face expressionless. His eyes were solid black. Be glad, Rena, Rabbi Aranello. You will die as a Roman. You will join the ghosts of Pompeii. The ground rumbled all around the courtyard. Spirals of ash swirled in the air. They solidified into crude human figures, earthen shells like the ones in the museum. They stared at Rena, their eyes ragged holes in faces of rock. The earth will swallow you. The earth will swallow you, Head said in the voice of Gaia. The earth will swallow you, Head said in the voice of Gaia, just as it swallowed them. Chapter 8, Rena. There were too many of them, Rena wondered bitterly. How many times he'd said that in her demigod career. She would have a badge made and wear it out to save time when she died. The words would probably be written on her tombstone. There were too many of them. Her greyhound stood on either side of her, growling at the earthen shells. Rena counted at least 20, closing in from every direction. Coach Hedge continued to speak in a very womanly voice. The dead always outnumbered the living. These spirits have waited centuries unable to express their anger. Now I have given them bodies of earth. One earthen ghost stepped forward. It moved slowly, but its footfall was so heavy it cracked the ancient tiles. Nico, Rena was called. I can't control them, he said frantically, untangling harness. Untangling his harness. Something about this rock shells. I guess I need a couple of seconds to concentrate on making the shadow jump. Otherwise I might teleport us into another volcano. Rena cursed under her breath. There was no way she could fight off so many by herself while Michael prepared their escape, especially while Head was out of commission. Use the scepter, she said. Get me some zombies. It will not help, Coach Hedge intoned. Stand aside, Praetor. Let the ghost of Pompeii destroy the Greek statue. A true Roman would not resist. The earthen ghost shuffled forward. Through their mouth holes they made hollow whistling noises, like someone blowing across empty soda bottles. One stepped on the coach's dagger tennis racket trap and smashed it to pieces. From his belt, Michael pulled the scepter of Diocletian. Rena, if I summoned more dead Romans, who's to say they won't join this mob? I say I'm a traitor. Get me some legionnaires and I'll control them. You shall perish, said the coach. You shall never. Rena smacked him on the head with the pommel of her knife. The satyr crumbled. Sorry, coach, she muttered. That was getting tiresome. Nico, zombies! They concentrated on getting us out of here. Nico raised his scepter as the ground trembled. The earthen ghost chose that moment to charge. Oram leaped at the nearest one and literally bit the creature's head off with his metal fangs. The rock's shell toppled backward and shattered. Orgumton was not so lucky. He sprang at another which swung its heavy arm and bashed the greyhound in his face. Orgumton went flying. He staggered to his feet. His head was twisted 40 degrees to the right. One of his ruby eyes was missing. Anger hammered in Rena's chest like a hot spike. She'd already lost her Pegasus. She was not going to lose her dogs, too. She slashed a knife through the ghost's chest. Then drew her gladius. Strictly speaking, fighting with two blades wasn't very Roman. But Rena had spent time with pirates. She'd picked up more than a few tricks. The earth's shells crumbled easily, but they hit like sledgehammers. Rena didn't understand how, but she knew she couldn't afford to take even one blow. Unlike Argentum, she wouldn't survive getting her head knocked sideways. Nico! She ducked between two earthen ghosts, allowing them to smash each other's heads. Any time now! The ground split open. Down the centre of the courtyard, dozens of skeletal soldiers clawed their way to the surface. Their shields looked like the giant corroded pennies. Their blades were more rust than metal. Verena had never been so relieved to see reinforcements. "Legion!" she shouted. "Alasiam! Alasiam!" The zombies responded, pushing the earthen ghosts to form a battle line. Some fell, crushed by stone fists. Others managed to close ranks and raise their shields. Behind her, Nico cursed. Rena risked a backwards hand. The scepter of Diocletian was smoking in Nico's hands. "It's fighting me," he yelled. "I don't think it likes summoning Romans to fight other Romans." Rena knew that ancient Romans had spent at least half their time fighting each other, but she decided not to bring that up. "Just secure Coach Hedge. Get ready to shadow travel. I'll buy you some," Nico yelped. The scepter of Diocletian exploded in pieces. Nico didn't look hurt, but he stared at Rena in shock. I don't know what happened. You've got a few minutes tops before your zombies disappear." "Legion!" Rena shouted. "Obem format! Gladium Signa!" The zombies circled the Athenian partners, their swords ready for close quarters fighting. Argentum dragged the unconscious Coach Hedge over to Nico, who was furiously strapping himself into the harness. All around stood guard, lunging at any earth ghost who broke through the line. Rena fought shoulder to shoulder with the dead legionnaires, sending her strength into their ranks. He knew it wouldn't be enough. The earthen ghosts fell easily, but more kept rising from the ground into swirls of ash. Each time their stone fists connected, another zombie went down. Meanwhile, the Athenian Parthenos towered over the battle, regal, haughty and unconcerned. A little help would be nice, Rena thought. Maybe a destructo ray or some good old-fashioned smitting. The statue did nothing except radiate hatred, which seemed directly equally at Rena and the attacking ghost. "You want to lug me to Long Island?" the statue seemed to say. "Good luck with that, Roman scum." Rena's destiny to die defending a passive-aggressive goddess. She kept fighting, extending more of her will to the undead troops. In return, they bombarded her with their despair and resentment. "You fight for nothing," the zombie legionnaire whispered in her mind. "The Empire is gone." For Rome!" Rena cried hoarsely. She slashed her gladius through one earthen ghost and stabbed her dagger in another's chest. 12th Legion full Minotaur! All around her, zombies fell. Some were crushed in battle, others disintegrated on their own as the residual power of Diocletian's scepter finally fell. The earthen ghosts closed in a sea of misshapen faces with hollow eyes. "Rena, now!" Nico yelled. "We're leaving!" She glanced back. Nico had harnessed himself to the Athenian Parthenos. He held the unconscious Gleason Hedge in his arms like a damsel in distress. Orm and Argentum had disappeared, perhaps too badly damaged to continue fighting. Rena stumbled. A rock fist gave her a glancing blow to the ribcage, and her side erupted in pain. Her head swam. She tried to breathe, but it was like inhaling knives. "Rena!" Nico shouted again. The Athenian Parthenos flickered about to disappear. An earthen ghost swung at Rena's head. She managed to jump, but the pain in her ribs almost made her black out. "Give up," said the voices in her head. "The legacy of Rome is dead and buried, just like Pompeii." "No," she murmured to herself. "Not while I'm still alive." Nico stretched out his hand, and she slipped into shadow with the last of her strength. Rena leaped towards him. Chapter 9, Leo. Leo didn't want to come out of the wall. He had 3 more braces to attach, and nobody else was skinny enough to fit into the crawl space. One of the many advantages of being scrawny. Wedged between the layers of their hull with plumbing and wiring, Leo could be alone with his thoughts. When he got frustrated, which happened about every 5 seconds, He could hit his stuff with his mallet, and the other crew members would figure he was working, not throwing a tantrum. One problem with his secretary, he only fitted up to his waist. His butt and legs were still on view to the general public, which made it hard for him to hide. "Leo!" Piper's voice came from somewhere behind him. "We need you!" The celestial bronze O-ring slipped out of Leo's pliers and slid into the depths of the crawl space. Leo sighed. "Talk to the pants, Piper, 'cause the hands are busy." "I'm not talking to the pants. Meeting in the mess hall. We're almost at Olympia." "Yeah, fine, I'll be there in a sec." "What are you doing anyway? You've been poking around inside that hull for days." Leo swept his flashlight across the celestial bronze plates and piston. He'd been stalling slowly, but surely routine maintenance. Silence. Piper was still good at knowing when he was lying. "Leo, hey, while you're out there, do me a favor. I got this itch right below my... Fine, I'm leaving. Leo allowed himself a couple more minutes to fasten the brace. His work wasn't done, not by a long shot, but he was making progress. Of course, he'd laid the groundwork for his secret project. When he first built the Argo 2, he hadn't told anyone about it. He'd barely been honest with himself about what he was doing. Nothing lasts forever, his dad once told him. Not even the best machines. Yeah, okay, maybe that was true, but Hephaestus had also said, everything can be reused. Leo intended to test that theory. It was a dangerous risk. If he failed, it would crush him. Not just emotionally, it would physically crush him. The thought made him claustrophobic. He wriggled out of the crawl space and went back into his cabin. Well, technically, it was his cabin, but he didn't sleep there. The mattress was littered with wires, nails, and the guts of several disassembled bronze machines. His three massive rolling tool cabinets, Chico, Harpo, and Grouch, took up most of the room. Dozens of power tools hung on the walls. The work table was piled with photocopied blueprints on space. The forgotten academics text Leo had liberated from an underground workshop in Rome. Even if he wanted to sleep in his cabin, it would have been too cramped and dangerous. He preferred to bed down in the engine room, where the constant hum of machinery helped him fall asleep. Besides, ever since his time on the island of Ogygia, he had become fond of camping out. A bedroll on the floor was all he needed. His cabin was only for storage and for working on his most difficult projects. He pulled his keys from his tool belt. He didn't really have time, but he unlocked Grouch's mill drawer and stared at the two precious objects inside. A bronze astrolabe he'd picked up in Bologna, and a fist-sized chunk of crystal from Ogygia. Leo hadn't figured out how to put the two things together yet, and it was driving him crazy. He'd been hoping to get some answers when they visited Ithaca. After all, it was the home of Odysseus, the dude who had constructed the astrolabe. But judging from what Jason had said, those runes hadn't held any answers for him. Just a bunch of ill-tempered ghosts and gulls. I don't like the sound of ghosts or gulls. Anyways, Odysseus never got the astrolabe to work. He hadn't had a crystal to use as a homing beacon. Leo did, though. He would have to succeed where the cleverest demigod of all time had failed. Just Leo's luck, a super hot immortal girl waiting for him on Ogygia, but he couldn't figure out how to wire a stupid chunk of rock into a 3,000-year-old navigation device. Some problems even duct tape couldn't solve. Leo closed the drawer and locked it. His eyes drifted to the bulletin board above his work table, where two pictures hung side by side. The first was the old crayon drawing he'd made when he was 7 years old, a diagram of a flying ship he'd seen in his dreams. The second was a charcoal sketch Hazel had recently made for him. Hazel never skewed. That girl was something. As soon as Leah rejoined the crew in Malta, she'd known right away that Leah was hurting inside. The first chance she got after all that mess in the house of Hazel, she'd marched into Leah's cabin and said, "Spill." Hazel was a good listener. Leo had told her the whole story. Later that evening, Hazel came back with her sketch pad and charcoal pencils. Describe her, she insisted. Every detail. It felt a little weird helping Hazel make a portrait of Calypso, as if he were talking to a police artist. Yes, officer. That girl who stole my heart sounded like a freaking country song. But describing Calypso had been easy. Leo couldn't close his eyes without seeing her. Now, her likeness gazed back at him from the bulletin board. Her almond-shaped eyes, her pouty lips, her long straight hair swept over one shoulder, of her sleeveless dress. He could almost smell her cinnamon fragrance, her knitted brow and the downward turn of her mouth seemed to say, "Leo Roldex, you were so full of it." Dang, he loved that woman. Leo had pinned her portrait next to the drawing of the Argo to remind himself that sometimes visions do come true. As a little kid, he dreamed about a flying ship. Eventually, he built it. Now he would build a way to get back Calypso. The hum of the ship's engine changed to a lower pitch. Over the cabin loudspeaker, Festus's voice creaked and squeaked. "Yeah, thanks, buddy," Leo said. On my way, the ship was descending, which meant Leo's projects would have to wait. Sit tight, sunshine, he told Calypso's picture. "I'll get back to you just like I promised." Leo could imagine her response. "I am not waiting for you, Leo Roldex. I am not in love with you, and I certainly don't believe your foolish promise." The thought made him smile. He slipped his keys back into his tool belt and headed for the mess hall. The other 6 demigods were eating breakfast. Once upon a time, Leo would have worried about all of them being together below decks, with nobody at the helm. But ever since Piper had permanently woken up with Festus with her chance week, a feat Leo still did not understand. The dragon figurehead had been more capable of running the Argo 2 by himself. Festus could navigate, check the radio, make a blueberry smoothie, or spew white-hot jets of fire at invaders simultaneously without even blowing a circuit. Besides, they had Buffalo, the Wonder Table, as backup. After Coach Head left on his shadow travel expedition, Leo had decided that his 3-legged table could do just as good a job as the adult chaperone. He had limited Buffalo's table with a magic scroll that projected a pin-sized holographic simulation of Coach Hedge. Mini Hedge would stomp around on Buffalo's top, randomly saying things like, "Cut that out, I'm going to kill you," and even popular, "Put some clothes on." Today, Buffalo was manning the helm. If Festus's flame didn't scare away the monsters, Buffalo's holographic hedge definitely would. Leo stood in the doorway of the mess hall, taking in the scene around the dining table. It wasn't often he got to see all his friends together. Percy was eating a huge stack of blue pancakes. What was he deal with? Blue food? Well, Annabeth chided him for pouring on too much syrup. "You're drowning them," she complained. "Hey, I'm a Poseidon kid," he said. "I can't drown, and neither can my pancakes." So they left. Frank and Hazel used their cereal bowls to flatten out a map of Greece. They looked over it, their heads close together. Everyone in a while, Frank's head would cover Hazel's, just sweet and natural, like they were an old married couple. And Hazel didn't even look flustered, which is real progress for a girl from the 1940s. Until recently, if somebody said, "Gosh darn," she would nearly faint. At the head of the table, Jason sat uncomfortably with his shirt rolled up to his rib cage. As Nurse Piper changed his bandages, "Hold still," he said. "I know it hurts. It's just cold." Leo could hear the pain in his voice. That stupid gladius blade had pierced him all the way through. The entrance wound on his back was an ugly shade of purple, and it steamed. Probably not a good sign. Piper tried to stay positive, but privately she had told Nico how worried she was. Ambrosia nectar and mortal medicine could only help so much. A deep cut from celestial bronze or imperial gold could literally dissolve a demigod's essence from the inside out. Jason might get better. He claimed he felt better, but Piper wasn't so sure. Too bad Jason wasn't a metal automation. At least then Leo would have an idea of how to help his best friend with humans. Leo felt helpless. They broke way too easily. He loved friends. He'd do anything for them, but as he looked at the 6 of them, 3 couples all focused on each other, he thought about the warning from Nemesis, the revenge goddess. "You will not find a place among your brethren. You will always be the 7th wheel." He was starting to think Nemesis was right. Assuming, like Leo lived long enough, assuming his crazy secret plan worked. His destiny was with somebody else on an island that no man ever found twice. But for now, the best he could do was follow his old rule. Keep moving. Don't get bogged down. Don't think about the bad stuff. Smile and joke even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. "What's up, guys?" He strutted in the mess hall. "Oh, yes, brownies." He grabbed the last one from a special sea salt recipe they picked up from Afro's, the fish centre at the bottom of the Atlantic. The intercom crackled before the mini head yelled over the speakers, "Put some clothes on!" Everyone jumped. Hazel ended up 5 feet away from Frank. Percy spilled syrup in his orange juice. Jason awkwardly wriggled back into his t-shirt, and Frank turned into a bulldog. Piper glared at Leo. "I thought you were getting rid of that stupid hologram." "Hey, Buff was just saying good morning. He loves his hologram. Besides, we missed the coach, and Frank makes a cute bulldog." Frank morphed back into a burly, grumpy Chinese Canadian dude. "Just sit down, Leo. We've got stuff to talk about." Leo squeezed in between Leo and Hazel. He figured they were the least likely to smack him if he made bad jokes. He took a bite of his brownie and grabbed a pack of Italian junk food. Phonesies to round out his balanced breakfast. He'd become kind of addicted to things since buying some Bologna. They were cheesy and corny, 2 of his favourite qualities. "So," Jason winced as he leaned forward, "we're going to stay airborne and drop anchor as close as we can to Olympia. It's farther inland than like about 5 miles, but we don't have much choice. According to Juno, we have to find the goddess of victory and subdue her? Uncomfortable silence round the table. With the new drapes covering the holographic walls, the mess hall was darker and gloomier than it should have been. That couldn't be helped. Ever since the Kirkhopes' dwarf twins had short-circuited the walls, the real-time video feed from Camp Half-Blood often fuzzed out, changing into playback of extreme dwarf close-ups, red whiskers, nostrils, and bad dental work. It wasn't helpful when you're trying to eat or have serious conversations about the fate of the world. Percy sipped his syrup-flavoured orange juice. He seemed to find it okay. I'm cool with fighting the occasional goddesses, but isn't like one of the good ones? I mean, personally, I like victory. I can't get enough of it. Annabeth drummed her fingers on the table. It does seem strange. I understand why Nike would be in Olympia, home of the Olympics and all that. The contestants sacrificed to her. Greek and Romans worshipped her there for like 1,200 years, right? 1,200 years is not a real thing. It should be 1,200 years, right? Almost to the end of the Roman Empire, thankfully. Romans called her Victoria, but same difference. Everybody loved her. Who doesn't like to win? Not sure why we would have to subdue her. Jason frowned. A wisp of steam curled from the wound under his shirt. All I know, the goal Antionus said, "Victory runs rampant in Olympia." Juno warned us that we could never heal the rift between the Greeks and Romans unless we defeated Victory. How do we defeat Victory? Piper wondered. Sounds like one of those impossible riddles, like make stones fly, Leah said, or eating only one Fonzie. He popped a handful in his mouth. Hazel wrinkled his nose. That stuff is going to kill you. You kidding? So many preservatives in these things. I'll live forever, but hey, about this Victory goddess about being popular and great. Don't you guys remember what her kids are like at Camp Half-Blood? Hazel and Frank had never been to Camp Half-Blood, but the others nodded gravely. He's got a point, Percy said. Those kids in Cabin 17, they're super competitive. When it comes to capture the flag, they were almost worse than Ares kids. No offense, Frank? Frank shrugged. You're saying Nico has the dark side? Her kids sure do, Annabeth said. They never turn down a challenge. They have to be number one at everything. If their mom is that intense. Whoa. Piper put her hands on the table like the ship was rocking. Guys, all the gods are split between their Greeks and Romans aspect, right? If Nike's that way and she's the goddess of victory... Excuse me. She'd be really conflicted. Remember, she'd want one side or the other to win so she could declare a victor. She'd literally be fighting with herself. Hazel nudged her cereal bowl across the map of Greece. But we don't want one side or the other to win. We've got to get the Greeks and Romans on the same team. Maybe that's the problem, Jason said. If the goddess of victory is running rampant, torn between Greek and Roman, she might make it impossible to bring the two camps together. How? Leo asked. Start a flame war on Twitter? Percy stabbed at his pancake. Maybe she's like Eris. That guy can spark a fight just by walking into a crowded room. If Nike radiates contemplative vibes or something, she could aggravate the whole Greek Roman rivalry big time. Frank pointed at Percy. Remember that old sea god in Atlanta? Phorcys? He said that gayest plans always have the two camps always have, lots of layers. This could be part of the giant strategy. Keep the two camps divided. Keep the gods divided. If that's the case, we can't let Nico play us against each other. We could see a landing party of 4. 2 Greeks, 2 Romans. The balance might help keep her balanced. Listen to Zhang. Leo had one of those dull double take moments. He couldn't believe how much the guy had changed in the last few weeks. Frank wasn't just taller and buffer. He was more confident now. More willing to take charge. Maybe that was because his magic firewood flying was safely stashed away in a flameproof pouch, or maybe he commanded a zombie legion and he'd been promoted to praetor. Whatever case, Leo had trouble seeing him as the same klutzy dude who'd once iguanade his way out of Chinese handcuffs. I think Frank is right, Annabeth said. A party of 4. We'll have to be careful who goes. We don't want to do anything that might make the goddess more unstable. I'll go, Piper said. I can try charm speaking. Worry lines deepened around Annabeth's eyes. Not this time, Piper. Nike is all about competition. A project? Well, she is too in her own way. I think Nike might see as a threat. Once Leo might have made a joke about that. Piper, a threat? The girl was a sister here to him. But if he needed help beating up a gang of thugs or subduing a victory goddess, Piper was not the person he'd turn to. Recently, though, Piper may not have changed as obviously as Frank, but she had changed. She had stabbed Kyo, the snow goddess, in the chest. She had defeated the Boreas. She had slashed up a flock of wild harpies single-handedly. And as for her charm speak, she'd become so powerful, it made Leo nervous. If she told him to eat his vegetables, he might actually do it. Annabeth's words didn't seem to upset her. Piper just nodded and scanned the group. Who should go then? Jason and Percy shouldn't go together. Annabeth said, Jupiter and Poseidon, bad accommodation. Nike could start you two fighting easily. Piper gave her a sideways smile. We can't have another incident like in Canis. I might kill my boy Jason. Or I might kill my boy Percy, but Jason said, amiably. Which proves my point, Anna said. We also should send Frank and me together. Mars and Athena, that would be just as bad. We shouldn't send Frank and me together. Mars and Athena, that would be just as bad. Okay, Leo broke in, so Percy and me for the Greeks, Frank and Hazel for the Romans. Is that the ultimate non-competitive dream or team or what? Annabeth and Frank exchanged more godly looks. It could work, Frank decided. No combination is going to be perfect, but Poseidon and Hephaestus, Pluto, Mars. I don't see any huge antagonism there. Hazel traced her finger along the map of Greece. I still wish we could have gone through the Gulf of Corinth. I was hoping we could visit Delphi, maybe get some advice. Plus, it's such a long way around the Peloponnese. Yeah, Leo's heart sank when he looked at how much the coastline they still had to navigate. It's July 22nd already. Counting today, only 10 days until... I know, Jason said. But do you know what's clear? The shorter way would have been suicide. And as for Delphi, Piper leaned towards the map. The blue harpy feather in her hair swung like a pendulum. What's going on there? If Apollo doesn't have his oracle anymore, Percy wanted. Probably something to do with that creep Octavian. Maybe he was so bad at telling the future that he broke Apollo's powers. Jason managed to smile. Though his eyes were cloudy from pain. Hopefully we can find Apollo at our tennis. Then you can ask him yourselves. Juno, said the twins. Juno said the twins might be willing to help us. A lot of unanswered questions. A lot of miles to cover before we get to Athens. First things first, Red said. You guys have to find Nike and figure out how to subdue her. Whatever Juno meant by that, I still don't understand how you defeat a goddess who controls victory. Seems impossible. Leo started to grin. He couldn't help it. Sure, they only had 10 days to stop the giants from waking Gaia. Sure, he could die before dinner time. But he loved being told that something was impossible. It was like someone handing him a lemon meringue pie and telling him not to throw it. He just couldn't resist the challenge. We'll see about that, he rose to his feet. Let me get my collection of grenades and I'll meet you guys on deck. The end of chapter 9. And in my next video, I'll be reading chapter 10. And this is the end of my video on the Book of Olympus of this video, okay? Bye, everyone, and thank you for listening to my 1 hour, 11 minutes, and, 15 seconds, 20 second movie. Bye, everyone.